Made some headway on the compost heated high tunnel project, and I thought I would share notes. So this is the third in the series of heating the small cattle panel tunnel with a passive compost system that we can also use as a hotbed for starting seed. So let me explain what we're up to. If you want a lot more detail about what this project is about, the initial video, which I'll link to here, will give you the introduction to the concept. Part 2, which I should mention for a moment, I set up a compost pile on the outside of this high tunnel. We needed to clean out the bedding from our chicken coop anyway, deep litter method, and that's working well enough. I ran out of time and it got very snowy and very windy recently, so we put a mylar sheet on top. It's holding its own. It's definitely well above freezing. It remains to be seen if it's doing very effective work in bleeding warmth into this space. We'll probably take the sheet off and mulch it very deeply with loose, dry hay in the next few days. But made some very good headway, and in fact have it done enough to let it sit for a few days, see how it works, and get ready to seed it. This is the compost pile that is meant to provide passive heat to this space while being a hotbed for seed starting. And I wanted to work with just what we had on site. So this was a $0 project. I used a bale of hay. That was $2.50. I had this old ring of 2x4 welded wire, and it was just the right size to barely fit in here. Fits just fine enough. Ended up not changing out this well system for this project. It's just enough moving parts going on right now that's straightforward. It works well enough. But this allows me to still be able to dip in, and at some point we can use a solar powered pump to lift water from there. By laying out this ring, we dug down a little bit to remove some soil, and I set that aside, and I started by laying in a very coarse layer of wood chips and some little bits of logs and some very loose hay on the bottom to allow aeration to happen underneath. And then from there, I went out to the chicken yard and looked for sections of their composting system that were absolutely rip-roaring, piping hot, and took wheelbarrow loads of 4 buckets at a time of that material and laid this in here. Each layer I put some hay in between with the idea of adding some insulation, some air, and some more carbon so that this can hopefully not burn super hot but rather be a nice even keel warm burn. In the process of getting the buckets of really hot compost, I also looked for areas in their composting system that had very active red wigglers and took a few buckets of those and added them into this pile as well, gently poured them in. So by all accounts, this should be an active red wiggler production space along with a hotbed space, if that works out well. And just basically follow that pattern all the way up, adding in all these hot layers, spreading them out, adding in some hay, adding in some sawdust. And then as I got closer to the top, I dumped a half of a bag of biochar, or charcoal, that we made in our wood stove that was made out of sawdust. And the idea was having a good 3 or 4 inch layer of that on top will hopefully absorb some of the excess gases that might come out of this system. And then I went through the high tunnel and used the shovel to rob some of the sawdust that was in the walkways to bulk this out and add some more carbon. We can replace that with raw, fresh sawdust soon enough. And then took the soil that was set aside, capped it about 4 inches thick with soil, and now I've got 2 temp probes in here. And when I finished this morning, the first temp probe, which is in the soil in here, read just below 40 degrees, and the one in the compost read right at 60 degrees Fahrenheit. The compost one has since gone up to about 72, and so I'm going to monitor that. We're not seeding this out just yet. We'll give this a day or two. We're going to be coming into some nights around 12 degrees overnight, 15 degrees overnight, and I'd like to see what the temperature differences are in here. We may consider putting some sort of poly hoop over this to make a really warm microclimate. In that case, I think we could even do tomatoes, eggplants, peppers in here within a month. But we'll share more notes as we go. That's the update for now. Pretty straightforward, a fun project to work on during a really super blustery, snowy, nasty day outside. It almost got a little overheated in here from the steam while I was making this. You can hear the winds are picking up. It's not very comfortable outside, but it's nice in here. So that's where this is for now. Let me know if you've got some other thoughts about how this is evolving or what could be better. And we'll share notes with you once we got this seeded out and what the next steps will be. Thanks for watching.